Take a deep breath and realize this is the day the Lord has made, and I am so excited to be here with all of you. Oh my goodness, it's just wonderful. I don't see any unfamiliar faces, and it's the core group that likes to come together and rejoice as we start a new week together, isn't it? It's wonderful. Yes, I see our friends from Fresno have come with their croissants, I think. Nice to see you. So we welcome all of you, and of course, this does get recorded and put up on YouTube, and so it's there for others to see in the future. So for all of you who might be watching this on YouTube, we welcome you to this replay of today's service, and it's wonderful to have you join us in spirit and in truth. Oh, I'm just going to jump right into the daily word today because it's a wonderful one that I have experienced this week in a really wonderful way, and that is serving others. I bring God's love into the world through service. And because we all do this and we're all in the same spirit, I like to change the words from I to we so that we can all feel the impact of these words. We don't need special skills to be of service. We have willing hands and open hearts, channels of God's love to be directed wherever they are needed most. This impulse to serve is our compassionate nature seeking expression. We respond to the needs around us by doing what we can to help. We do not think of reward or recognition. Just being of service fills our hearts. Serving is a wonderful way to feel close to God. Our loving hearts are open, our hands are busy, and our lives feel purposeful when we are doing what we can to brighten one person's life or to make the world a better place. I feel God's presence, we feel God's presence strongly as we serve and share the love and care of the divine. And I'm going to repeat that again. We feel God's presence strongly as we serve and share the love and care of the divine. And our source for that verse coming up is Matthew 25:35. It says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me." And I just think that's so wonderful because we may not always welcome everyone into our home. May not be able to do that, but where we do meet people, we can meet them at their place of need and serve them. And I just think that's so well. And welcome, Janet. It's good to see you. So that's the daily word. I love it. And I helped a friend this week declutter and take her some food as she recovered from a bad cough. And we really were putting into action the idea of circulation. And so I teased her this morning and I said, "You are the source and we are the channel," because we were able to find outlets for things that she was ready to release. And so much of this idea of prosperity comes to us in unity through so many channels, doesn't it? As we let go of what we don't need and somebody else might need it, and it just goes round and round, and it's a wonderful thing. Well, today is a special day, as we have already sung and as an intro, but I want to sing it again with the words, and it's on page 221. So I'll give you a moment to turn there if you need to look at the words. Page 221, it's a special day, and Eric will boom that up with Sharon playing the piano. All of you who were muted, I hope you did sing that out loud. I can't sing it out loud because the time difference is a little off and you would just wonder, why doesn't she catch up with the music? But I hope you feel the vibrations of all that. And of course, for me, this brings back an old hymn we used to sing years and years ago. It was, what was it? We shall come rejoicing, someone gathering the sheep or something like that. But it's wonderful to have the new unity words that bring us all together in a beautiful way every day. I love it. So we don't have too many announcements since we're on Zoom, but next week I understand Marty will be back with us, and that's a miracle given how ill and recovering he has gone through that. And we're thrilled to have him come back, and Brandy will be here. We will be in person and on Zoom next Sunday. So those of you who are in the area, we hope you can come for hugs and touches. And for those of you who come on Zoom, we hope to know that your presence is with us there as well. So just keep watching for your weekly blog that is sent out by Samantha, keeping us abreast on what's happening. And let's see, so the meditation song I've chosen for today is Have Thine Own Way, Lord. I love that song. It's on page 101. And certainly as we submit to the God in our lives to do what we're called to do, we get to know that we want Spirit to have their own way in our lives. Page 101. I love that last phrase, Christ only always living in me. He is the vine and we are the branches. I just love that. So as we take time to go into meditation, know that you are loved. Know that you are special. Every one of you have a calling to do your work as you serve your community, your family, and the world. It's nice to relax, let your shoulders go, and just be in this special place where we are alone, but yet all together. Have thine own way, Lord. Have thine own way. You are the potter. I am the clay. Mold me and make me after thy will. And that is so beautiful to know. One of the things that has really helped me in my journey in unity is getting in touch with God's unconditional love. There are no hoops we have to jump through, no rituals we have to comply with. We are loved. Can you embrace that? Can you feel the power behind that? that you are loved just for who you are. Just for who you are. There's no one in the world like you. There's no one to compete with. There's no one to measure up against. Just be. Take a few moments to get in touch with that wonderful gift we have, that gift of unconditional love. And as you breathe that idea, those wonderful thoughts into your body, let go of anything that's contrary to knowing how loved you are. It is such a beautiful, freeing knowledge to know that we can do no wrong. We can only learn and grow. Oh, Father, Mother God, I give thanks for everyone who has joined us this day. I give thanks for the talent each one has. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to serve and for those who serve in so many different ways, those who are seen and those who are not seen. And we bring all of those people that are in the prayer box, all the animals, our pets, our loved ones, maybe people who have passed this week, as I have had a friend pass, people who are ill and recovering. We bring all of these needs and ask your blessing. Bless us all as we go forward. And before I have Phil come on, we will remember there is only one presence, one power, one love active in our lives today. God, the good, omnipotent. And say with me, there is only one presence, one power, and one love active in your life. God, the good, omnipotent. And for our ministry, we know there is only one presence, one power, and one love active in this ministry today. And for the entire world at large, we know there is only one power, one presence, and one love active in our world today. God, the good, omnipotent. And for all of this, we give thanks. Amen. Take it away, Phil.
Esther, thank you, dear. It's always a privilege to be serving with you. Special blessing. Let's see. I realize you can't really see my dress today, and I intended to have you see it. I'm going to tip my screen and see what happens. Can you see anything there about what I'm wearing?
Yes.
That shirt? Well, that's my prison shirt. I say that because when I wear this shirt, people accuse me of looking like a prisoner with the stripes on it. But I thought it was a symbolic gesture today because those of us who have lived here in the frozen north have really felt like we've been in prison lately. Between the snow and the wind, yesterday the winds were just howling. So anyway, when I thought, what do I wear? I thought, I'll wear my prison shirt. Well, friends, I have a special feeling about our lesson today. I feel it's a very significant one for all of us. I know it is for me. So I hope I'm able to convey to you something will have a real useful and also a very important part of your life. I want to begin by reading a little scripture to you, just the verse from Genesis 2, verse 19. And out of the ground the Lord God formed every beast of the field and every fowl of the air, and brought them unto Adam, the man, to see what he would call them. And whatsoever Adam called every living creature, that was the name thereof. I'm sure some of you read that before. Does that grab you, that verse? You know, God's telling Adam he wants him to name all the animals. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Doesn't it? Well, a lot of people think it makes no sense at all because even though my feeling in sharing it with you today is that it's one of the most important bits of scripture in the entire Bible. And yet, I know that, though I say that because I know that this particular verse and other like it in the Old Testament are filled with important information that you and I need to know and to live our lives successfully. This story is like other stories of the Old Testament, like the Garden of Eden story, the great flood of Noah. Nora too. I think she probably was there. Anyway, uh, it's like those stories. They are rich material for the doubters to point their finger at you and me and others like us and say, "Come on, you believe all those crazy stories?" If you say you do, I mean, I'll tell you, now I'm playing their role. This is not me. But if you believe all those crazy stories, then you can know why I'm not at all interested in so-called Christian denomination or any other that depends upon the Bible for demonstrating how real the teaching is that this particular denomination expounds. I have heard it many times, people who are trying to be very kind to me and say, well, I understand your belief in your conviction, but, you know, you can't even begin to convince me that these stories in the Bible are real. It's just fictitious. The story of bringing animals in to be named by Adam, again, come on. First of all, how it could have taken place that they could be with all those animals, etc. But even if it were, it makes no sense. And so to believe anything that comes after in that book called the Bible doesn't make sense. And I know you know what I'm leading up to, but I can appreciate where they're coming from. You see, until I became involved in Unity, I didn't know anything about the metaphysical interpretations of the Bible. And like most people who are trying to understand it, they look at it as if it were meant to be a literally uh, understood piece of work. When the truth is that the Old Testament is primarily a total metaphysical work. That it is not meant to be taken literally. It is all symbolic of principles of truth. They're very practical for our living. That when you understand it, it opens the whole new world that led to the creation of the New Testament and the ministry of Jesus Christ. So today, I've begun with this by saying to you that what I've just shared with you about naming the animals is one of the most practical, powerful things that you can know about your life. And in one sense, you can appreciate it, first of all, if you're a lover of animals, and you can remember the big moment when you got an animal, when you named it. You know, you really thoughtfully thought about your animals. I remember when I was, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9, when I raised chickens. And I can still remember the names of some of them. There was Elmer. He was a white leghorn, a very spindly kind of chicken, but oh, was Elmer tough. He had to be called Elmer. And then there was Jenny. Jenny was a Plymouth kind of chicken, which was round and her feathers were all speckled like black and white. I can still see her. And naming her Jenny seemed very appropriate at the time. So part of me just takes the story very literally and say, I can see why it's important to name your animals. When I named my animals and what they meant to me, this is an aside. I'll never forget when Jenny appeared on the kitchen table one time. And I don't mean it, I mean, she'd been dressed in the kitchen by my mother. I mean, that was a shock. But anyway, that's the way it was. And life was for people who raise chickens. So, as you already have assumed, the story in the Old Testament is not about chickens or animals, but rather it is presented to relate to every experience and event in life that you might be confronted with. The story is saying to us, God brings you every animal creation in life, in a sense, every event that takes place in life, and says, what are you going to name it? What are you going to name this? What are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about this thing you just read in the paper. Oh, if you don't like that, what about what I hear is happening in the office? What do you think about that? What are you going to name it? What about that neighbor who's giving you a little trouble over the fence? What are you going to name that experience? Life is constantly bringing us one event, one animal after another and say, what are you going to name it? Well, why is that so important? Again, if it was just supposed to be taken literally and it was just about animals, it might not mean that much. But when you realize that the author, these brilliant authors that gave us these metaphysically shaped stories of the Old Testament, was trying to give you something that was meaningful for your everyday life, you give it a lot of thought. What are you going to name the animals or the everyday events of your life? Whether they be good or big, I mean, small or big, what are you going to name them? Because whether you know it or not, you do. And I do. Something happens, we may just name it uneventful. So she just, it's gone right out of our mind. Something else might be rather big, a headline in a newspaper, or an experience you just had with your neighbor who lives next door to you, what are you going to name that experience? As I say, whether you know it or not, you do. Our mind immediately gives to us what it means to us. That's the name. Every experience of your life, you name. And why is that significant? Because that's where the creative energy of your life goes. The way you name the events of your life is where your use of God's creative energy goes to be experienced in your life. You're going to get, by your naming process, you're going to get the creative energy of thought in your world. Another simpler way that we often say is what you think is what you're going to get. It's just that this wonderful creator of this story in the Old Testament was just saying this is where it starts in the naming process. But you're going to get what you thought. And do you know how many people know this? And I say that as if I was an authority on a figure. I'm not. But I'll just take a big guess and say at least 96.7% of the human race doesn't know what we've just shared. They don't know that what you name things is the way you direct the energy of your consciousness to actually begin to bring that into formation in some manner at some level in your life. You're a walking, living energy machine. And you're constantly, through your naming process, putting that energy to work. You know, when I affirm for you how unfortunately so few, I think, know this, um, I often think if somebody was to give me just millions and millions of dollars so that I could take it to try to think, how can I impress the world? I have a fellow who teaches meditation that gets together with me quite often, and we brainstorm things and we've discussed that. And what we agreed we would do is that we would use this huge sum of money we get to hire, if necessary, some of the great physicists of our world who have begun to testify what I've just said to you, that your thoughts create your life. And because when I get up as the minister to a strange group of people and say that, they say, well, that's interesting. But today, if a physicist says that to you, they say, whoa, science says that's true now. And of course, by Lamster, and that's good as long as we can get people to realize the world that we live in and share together is the group gathering of our consciousness that tells us what's going to happen. Where our future lies is what is the energy that we're creating by how we use this naming process. In Proverbs 27, we were given a very simple clue to this truth that, again, people are aware of, but it doesn't seem to sink in. And the Proverbs affirmation says simply, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Well, it can't get any simpler than that, because it says not only what you think, but it doesn't say what you think casually is what you're going to get. What's in your heart, what you really feel when you name something is what you're going to get. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Well, this is an old-time thought to we metaphysicians that I'm reaffirming for us today. But do we really know it in terms of acting very thoughtfully about it when it comes to naming the events that take place in our lives or in our world? I was reminded to share this with you today because of the growing amount of information that is being fed to all of us about how many people are depressed today. The world literally, and because we have the input, it's not just Americans, it's all over the world. There is an incredible amount of depressive consciousness. Now, where does that come from? It, as I'm affirming today, it's becoming into a world because people are using their powerful ability to shape energy to reproduce the negatives of the world rather than to create the world they desire. And because they do not know this, they become totally frustrated and eventually depressed by the realization that things are a mess and they're not going to get any better, apparently. You know, as I was working with this, I had been reviewing a wonderful book about my spiritual hero, Teilhard de Chardin, and I was amazed. No, I was once again thrilled by the fact when I opened this particular book, reading about his life story, it fell right to this place where it said Teilhard was living in China at this particular time, and China was at war with their struggle who was going to be, as we know, whether it was going to go to a free enterprise or a communist kind of leadership, and many other major decisions that would be made. And he was involved in all that, living in China. And at the same time, all this was taking place when around the world there was all sorts of things going on that are similar to what's happening to us today. In other words, as Teilhard was describing there, the world was in a chaos. And he was living in China, cut off from the world, frustrated by it. Plus, the Catholic Church had, for about the 10th time, failed to, or rather said they would not let him publish his work because he was a Jesuit priest and they had to give him permission, or he had to leave the priesthood and he couldn't do that. So here he was, depressed by all this. And so I was amazed when he said that he went into a total depression and he learned what people experience when they're in depression. And he said it brought me to the fact that I would sob, literally sob. I was so depressed. And I thought, God bless him. If this could happen to a giant like Teilhard, it's understandable how people can be depressed in the kind of situation that we are having in the world. So that's how I got on this. And it obviously leads to say, well, what do we need to do? Two ways. First of all, to keep ourselves from experiencing a depressive state of mind, which is obviously the last place you want to go. And what can we do to help and bless our world in light of this? I found myself thinking at this stage of the football view of life regarding football. I think I've in the past, I'm sure I've shared this with you before, and that is that the best defense, so that we don't have to lose this battle, and in case of what we're thinking about, the best defense against my experience and or other people experiencing depression is a strong offense. What can we do to safeguard ourselves from ever being depressed or others? And as I thought about helping all of us to put this in the form of a continual defensive attack position, as they do in sports or in football, I thought we have got to take the fullest knowledge that we have of what is life's reality and embrace it within ourselves in an absolute sense, and a willingness to share with others who, whether they have a spiritual or Christian background or whatever, it it needs to be affirmed. Whether people like to see you're coming around the end in your football make team making the attack, which reminds me, this is a little interesting sidelight. Any of you who watched the recent championships in football between the University of Washington and who were they playing? It doesn't matter. They're playing another team, but University of Washington lost because their primary attack was passing, and passes are fabulous when they work, but if they're not working, it leaves you hanging because the other team, which was, oh, anyway, they're noted for their size and their bigness. And when they would do their attack position, they would come around with all this strength and force. And they won the game because that was the best approach, which was going all out rather than trying the iffy kind of approach of passing. Now, I may have left a lot of you don't care anything about football. And I apologize for that, but I just love when there are comparisons in sports to our lives. So, what I'm saying to is for our own lives and for the world, we have to not wait and see how we sort of are moved day by day about this, but rather we need to plan the best offense we can, and that is to affirm the power that we have within us, or the truth that is the power within us. And that is simply, you can say this, I've heard that a million times. God is in charge, and all things are working together for good. God is in charge, and all things are working together for good. Okay, hold everything. But wait a minute. There are people who are being killed mercilessly. Unbelievable. In huge amounts in various places around the world. Some areas of the world it goes on all the time, doesn't even hardly make the headlines, but you learn that in that culture, it's cruel, it's sad, it's bad. Bad from where we stand, for sure, where life is peaceful and beautiful and so wonderful. And so, what are we going to do about it? We're going to name it. It's a long name, but the name of the situation that I'm hearing about is God is in charge of this universe, and all things are working together for good. My guess is if I said that in a mixed group of metaphysicians, even, that some would begin to, like some of your brows, I see your, oh, wait a minute. God is in charge and all things are working together for good. And now you're talking about that situation where all those little children were killed, etc. etc. Come on. Well, it happens to be that there is no more powerful thought than you can think. God is in charge of everything. I mean, where were you and I to analyze whether we were thinking the right thing when the universe was formed? And if suddenly sometimes my mind leaps away and I think, do I want to go down that road? But can you imagine what it was like when God created the universe? They tell us uh, everything was flying around in space, and then it began to coagulate. We built an Earth. We built the process of God's creation, built an Earth, and God looked at the Earth and said, "Wait a minute, it's dark there half of the time. Nobody's going to want to live on that ball. Dark all the time. Oh, well, we need something that will reflect the sun's light onto the Earth. We'll call it a moon." And so what happened? Something, the scientists tell us, this is not Phil, scientists tell us something sliced off a piece of the Earth, and it went so far away from the Earth until suddenly it stopped by gravity attraction, and it stayed there, and it became the reflective um, organism, the reflective planet that captured the rays of the sun and shined it on the earth during the period of the darkness, at least a lot of the time. And so suddenly the earth and the people who were going to live on God's earth had the ability to function in the light instead of total darkness. Can you imagine that if we lived um, 10 hours of a day in total darkness? Total darkness. You'd have to live totally by artificial light. Any event, my mind has run down that road a little bit because I was just trying to say, where were you? Now, when I say where were you, those who are doubting and saying, wait a minute, how can you say this is a powerful statement? This is God's universe and all things are working together for good. Because no matter what the appearance is, no matter what the chaos appears to be, the truth is this is God's universe, God is in charge, and God is working to bring forth good. Again, and I'm not saying you're going this way, but the world would well wrinkle their brow and say, I know, but just how can you have those people being killed like that? And of course, as we have affirmed on other programs, and I hope that you know every ounce of your being, one thing is God knows because God has planned it. Nobody dies. There is no death. There is no death. There's transformation, but there is no death. And so God knows that and knows in working with the process of bringing us where we have to be. Often God either will allow or perhaps, don't quote me on this, but even cause us to go through chaotic experience to accomplish the end result. Just like breaking the piece of earth off to create the moon, that was not a happy looking process, I'm sure. But because God was so in charge, that piece that was pulled off the earth didn't just fly off into nothingness, dissolve. It became the fulfillment of the God idea that there will be a moon and there will be light. And so I'm saying this to you. No matter how bad situations look, the truth that we need to affirm as the name the process is, God is in charge of this universe. And all things are therefore working together for good, whether I can see it or not. I mean, the earth doesn't depend on what you think. Your life does. You're not going to save the earth by saying, I'm arguing with that. No, that's not good. I can't affirm that all things are working together for good. Well, you can hang on to naming it what you want, something that is ungodlike, that's not a part of God. And so I can't accept that. I call it that's bad. Well, if you want to call it bad, look out below because you just invited a little bit of that in your own life. and you thought you were standing up for the people who are being hurt or whatever has happened in the world is not good. You're not going to say God's there and it's all going to work for good because you wanted to name it that way. You felt better about calling it bad. And I'm not saying you do this. This is what we all perhaps fall into at times. And if you do this consistently and say, I tell you, it doesn't look like there's any God at work in this now. I have to name this stuff as bad. Well, you can forget everything I opened the program with. That is, that what you think is what you get. What you think is what you get. That reminds me, things come to me. I love it when we're working on a certain thing. Things come to me, and where did I see that? Anyway, it was an article um, that there were some group of intellects were writing about something. Anyway, they affirmed that same, what you think about is what you're going to get. I thought, whoa, they were talking about something unrelated to what we're talking about now, but it's uh, it's a wonderful process. Um, Someone is affirming, as perhaps for all of you, and it says it's hard to believe that God is a part of the process of war. I can understand that, and there's no way I could really present my case to this person from the standpoint we'd have to take a war and see how it all unfolded and happened to answer where did the energy come that would allow such a thing. Uh, I I never know whether I'm going to come up with a good analogy for you because my brain or mind is sort of off the track sometimes, as probably yours is. But can you imagine being a parent and you got a couple of rough and tough boys you're raising up, and they break out into a big fight, and the neighbor comes by, I haven't seen it. Aren't you going to stop them? Aren't you going to stop them? No, they have to learn something from this process. Did you start it? You say to the father. Father said, I didn't start it, but I've been watching them do this too long, and they've got to learn that that's not the way to settle an argument. And the best way is to let it come to a point where I can help them to see the results of it. Those of you who are parents know that sometimes you have to give leeway, and in that sense, you're condoning it. But you condone whatever is happening to the family because you know there's a lesson that has to be realized before they're going to reach the maturity that you want them to have. So my answer to that is hard to connect war to God, yes, but at the same time, uh, as I've said several times, I think already, there is no way you're going to lose anything by the result of war. The worst thing that everybody says, oh, you can't really kill all those people. Nobody dies. That's a bottom line figure. And I have never felt it as strong as I feel it now that people have to know everything so much that you read about. The bottom line to all is the worst thing can happen is people are going to die. Can you imagine? Let's try to convince God of that. The worst thing can happen to anybody is to die. No, the worst thing that could happen is to be locked into a negative situation and no way out. There's always a way out. You can always be transformed. And I'm sure there's somebody who think, well, this guy is a heartless little individual that ever was. It's not being heartless to recognize um, something that is a bottom line part of the process of life. Life is a transformative process that is always going a stop point. And that's, that's a whole nother couple of lessons without spending too much time on that. But death is an important part of the process of going forward. Important process. And that relates to these so-called negative things like war that we talk about. I wish when I share all that, I say, I know that so completely that I just wish I could share it with everyone to know that one factor that you cannot let dominate your name calling process in life is the thought that death is the worst thing that can happen to you. That's not so. Well, where are we? Oh my gosh, I'm out of time. I got carried away here. I guess you caused it all, you folks who asked me. Could it really apply to war? I just have to leave you and say, for the day, forgetting war and a major, if you can't handle that, just know this, that you are a name caller about everything that's happening in your life, whatever's in the headlines of the news or everything else. You can choose to call it bad, name it bad, and all I can say is, look out. You just put negative energy in your life. May sound selfish in terms of you thinking of yourself. You need to call it all good. And you call it all good even when it has negative written all over it, because this is God's universe and God is in charge. God created it, God created you, and therefore God is going to take care of it. All things are working together for good. I name the truth of our being for us today. God is in charge of our lives, of our world, and all things are working together for good. I give thanks that in the name of Jesus Christ, that is the truth. God bless you, friends.
Thank you, Reverend Phil Pearson, for visiting us again today and bringing these wonderful thoughts. I really like the way you take us from seeing the scripture as literal into understanding the metaphysical interpretation so that we can incorporate it into our daily lives and make it so real. So I call this church session good and beneficial. It's been wonderful. Well, it's time to take our offering, and we know that our resources come in so many forms, and this offerings that we give do allow us to continue this ministry. So we bless all of you for giving, either through the electronic way or when we're in person. But just know that your sacrifices and that your love gifts are really appreciated. And we know that we give in love because we love to give. Well, I want to sing one more song. It's on page 322, and I think time permits for it. And it's I Am Free, I Am Unlimited. And while Eric pulls that up, I want to read another daily word which said, trusting in the love of God, I find unlimited possibility. Divine love is unlimited. I can call upon it to heal and strengthen myself and to promote peace and harmony in my life and in the world. The love of God is simply inexhaustible and everywhere present. So if you have your hymnal, turn to page 322. We'll sing this song. we can name it, that we are free, we are unlimited right now, right now. Take that message with you this week, and you can all now unmute yourself as we say the prayer for protection.
Bless.
Are you all unmuted? Come join me, Ben.
Ready?
Yeah.
The light of God,
God surrounds us.
the
The
love of
love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God watches over us.
wherever
We are, God is,
And
and all is well.
bless you,
Bye,
bless you
everyone.
all week. See you next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil. I loved
I
it.
love you all. It's a privilege to serve you in any way.